financial advisor to Hurley in the Morning. On July 1st, we will enter our 25th year together. I'm trying to remember if July 1st happens to be – hold on a second. Go to my book. I want to see if July 1st 1st is a Wednesday, which is interesting to note. July 1st, 25 years ago, it was a Friday when we launched this program, but July 1st will be our 6,000th program. We've got it calculated down to where I think that is actually exactly accurate, that it will be the 6,000th program of Hurley in the Morning on July 1st. Chuck Malamut leads the Malamut Group at Morgan Stanley's Northfield office, and this program each Tuesday morning in the 8 o'clock hour is presented by Chuck Malamut, a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley. The information, views, and opinions expressed on this broadcast are those of Chuck and do not necessarily reflect those of Morgan Stanley or its affiliates. They are current as of the date of this broadcast and are subject to change without notice. Neither the information provided nor any opinion expressed herein constitutes a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. This presentation is for informational purposes only. Morgan Stanley Smith Barney, member SIPC. Well, look what Greece went and did, Chuck.
Good morning, Harry.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Very well, thank you.
Well, much to everyone's surprise, I guess is the best way to put it, as we got into last weekend, the expectation was that we would sort of kick the can down the road. Greece would come to an agreement with the ECU or the EU, and lo and behold, much to everybody's surprise, the results are a little bit different right now, and I just find it remarkable. You know, Harry, it's easy for us to sit here and just sort of sit back and try to capture the moment and understand what is going on, but to get this to a vote now on July the 5th, and negotiations are continuing to happen, I think, sort of behind the scenes. I can't imagine being a Greek citizen living through the trauma right now of
being
stock
told,
exchange being closed.
Being told you could go to an ATM that's empty anyhow, has no cash, and you're allowed to take out the American equivalent of $66, 60 euros. Now imagine that. But here's the problem, though, Chuck. They got offered a bailout. But ideology and wanting to keep their unsustainable, crazy way of life where broadcasters, because snot gets into the microphone, can retire at age 50 in Greece, wanting to keep this craziness going, they basically voted against. I know there's an election that's going to take place this weekend. We can talk about it, but they basically just threw away a deal that would have rescued them. To me, that is just the poster child for what we've been saying on this program for nearly 2.5 decades, that ideology trumps all reason.
I think, Harry, the issue here is the fact that at the very last minute, when the expectations were that again, there would be certain implications put on Greece with respect to the money that they were going to receive.
Yeah, they were going to have to make certain cuts, and they were going to have to do things a little differently than they've been doing them, because obviously what they're doing, which I think is really what we've been doing for the past 7 years, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned here, Chuck.
Well, Harry, there is, and this could be this could be brinkmanship as well, because as you know, there's a lot that happens behind the scenes that we are not aware of. But if you go back and look, I mean, yesterday was certainly not a great day for the equity markets. Global equity markets sold off, very significantly as that risk-off sentiment, following the breakdown of the talks between, Greece and the creditors, weighed on investors internationally, not just in Greece. Obviously, well, that stock exchange is closed and will remain closed for the week. So investors, went in and that risk off, sentiment, basically everybody ran out of equities into your safe havens, which happens to be, U.S. Treasuries, and those the Treasuries rallied and fairly significantly. So I think what happened was, again, the market was taken by surprise because the decision to break off the negotiations with the lenders and this national referendum, which I can't imagine they're doing this on July 5th to and think about this for a minute. You have a lot of very wealthy people in Greece, and you have a lot of poorer people in Greece.
So the vote's going to go like this. There's two options, ladies and gentlemen, listening to this in Greece. This is what you have. You have the first option, which is massively raise taxes on only the rich, and then you can keep this scam going for a bit longer. Or the second option would be to do what needs to be done to tighten the fiscal house, to make some of the changes that we'll call it the landlords that are willing to bail you out will do for you, as long as they say that they'll help you, but you have to help yourself. So those are the two choices. Chuck, I'm going to predict that since it's only whacking the rich, then option number one is the one to go. That's the way to go.
The option is to
raise taxes on the rich.
To take the bitter pill,
yes,
so to speak, raise taxes, put in certain restraints on all the population.
Well, that's not going to pass. That's the second part. They're going to vote. They're going to vote for raising taxes on the rich to pay for this.
So look. So the question is, do you put in this austerity program or programs that are needed? The uncertainty remains very, very elevated, as we know. It's all over. It's all over the globe in such a small country can take such a major focus out of what is going on in the world. So, so now what is happening with this uncertainty being elevated and the probability of what is referred to as the Greek exit.
The uncertainty is self-inflicted, Chuck. The bailout was there. They didn't go for it.
Well, Harry, I mean, yeah, when you're being told that your retirement age is going to go from 58 to 63, I mean, the number keeps moving, and chances are if you're living from paycheck to paycheck, chances are you might take the second option and say, okay, let's walk away from the euro, use our own currency. Now, when that happens, Harry, do you think about the potential inflationary? I mean, I've seen estimates anywhere from 30 to 40% of inflation.
It's suicide. They will be self-inflicting their own ruination. But what I'm trying to say is, and I always love it when there are examples where it's no longer just theory or abstract. They basically voted for their own ruination because they were unwilling to change. Yeah, look, if you were going to turn 58 this year or next year and you were thinking, oh, my gosh, I made it, and all of a sudden they tell you it's 62 or 63, yeah, sure, that stinks. Just like when I heard that I'm the first class that can't fully retire at 65, that it goes to 66. Hey, that's the way it goes. I dusted myself off and said, I'm not going to be able to retire then anyhow, so it didn't really affect me at all. But if you got told you're not going to have anything to retire with at 58, and that's just the way it was, and it can't be that way anymore. So you may as well go with the plan that actually has a chance to return the nation to fiscal solvency. But what I'm trying to get at, and I really believe this is the case, ideology, radical ideology, trumps reason every single time.
So, Harry, the debt has been downgraded as you would expect to a triple C minus.
Fantastic.
There's the first of the paybacks are scheduled today. Greece is scheduled to pay back the IMF $1.7 billion,
but they don't have it,
and they're
going to default.
It's expected that the payment's not going to be made. So what is happening is the credit rating companies are saying that that if they're not paying the IMF off, it doesn't constitute a default at this point in time. But it's very unclear how the ECB is going to react. So you have that push pull, and you have that ongoing ongoing struggle, and I guess it's.
Well, I
it's
just love the way
it's the fear of the known versus the fear of the unknown.
They want to take money, but not change. And the people that have been bailing them out have had it. They're not going to keep bailing them out to keep their unsustainable way of life in place. So now it got to the point where if we're going to bail you out, there are now conditions. You know, banks do that, Chuck, sometimes with business loans that they do. If a business loan is going bad, they will change the terms. They will get involved with what power somebody has, and after a certain amount, they have to get approval to do it. This happens. It happens when you prove you can't sustain. Then when you get help from external forces, they come with I'll just say it. They come with strings attached.
So, Harry, you have a number of converging factors here in the equity markets. You know, as we got into the weekend, you know, the S&P was up slightly over 3%. The Euro Stoxx 50 was up about 9%. The NASDAQ was up about 7%. And the Dow Jones was just barely squeaking by, up about 2%. So,
right. And then yesterday
hits, and it pretty much wipes out, you know, a lot of the gains. Certainly with the Dow is now in negative territory. The S&P 500 is right on the edge now. It's not just Greece. We were hit with a couple factors. You know, Puerto Rico basically, you know, said we are not in a position where we can repay our debts at this point in time. So we're going to have to, you know, hope to lower the interest rate on the outstanding obligations. I'm not quite certain how that's done, and we're going to extend the maturities. Now, a lot of municipal bond buyers, because Puerto Rico is exempt we have 50 states here in this country now. We do not have 57. We have 50 states.
Yeah, we have
okay.
50.
So in the 50 states, you can buy, you know, you could buy a piece of you can buy a municipal bond issued, you know, within the confines of Puerto Rico and be exempt not only from the state that you live in, but also I'm sorry, you can live in New Jersey, buy a Puerto Rico piece of paper, and that interest income that you receive is not taxable in the state of New Jersey. So for many, many years, Puerto Rico, you know, financed a lot of their obligations by selling their debt to, you know, a lot of us in this country. And then on top of that, you've had for the last several weeks a fairly significant sell-off in China. Because that market ramped up very significantly. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago, we were up almost about 50% year to date. Now we're up, you know, about 20%. And so you have a lot of converging factors and that happened, you know, very, very quickly. So if we go back to Greece for a second, that contagion. Remember, years ago, there was that fear that they would go down, and it would be quickly followed by Spain and Portugal and Italy. Well, the world has changed right now, so the systematic risk as we had previously, in all likelihood, that's not going to happen because the markets and the economies in Europe are in much better shape than they were back in 2011 or 2012. And that's pretty evident yesterday when you look at the euro and the fact that you know that currency did in fact rally in some very, very tough times. So is this a case in point where it's one and done, and it gives your listeners an opportunity to buy, you know, equities, and particularly not only domestic but also international when the markets, you know, give you those opportunities? I think Harry, that is a real good option for your listeners at this point in time. And the other thing to note about Greece, it's as we know the system today, we're much better prepared to handle the volatility in Greece than we had several years ago, particularly, you know, 2011, 2012. Think about it for a minute. We were just coming out of all the economic turmoil that we had here in the U.S., and then you had Greece sort of pile on top of that. So you might be in a situation, Harry, where the outcome for Greece might not be particularly good for the citizens of Greece, and again, depending upon how they decide to vote on this particular issue, we think that globally speaking, we're not in the same position that we were in, say, just 2-3 years ago.
Should anybody really expect, though, that you should continue to bail out a nation that refuses to make changes when what they are doing is bankrupting them? I mean, that just seems so obvious that you have to make that change, but they don't want to make that change. And I've heard the leader, the prime minister, say, we're not going to be dictated to. What are you talking about? You're broke as a joke. You're an absolute joke. You're bankrupt. What do you mean you're not going to be dictated to? Of course you will. You have to be, because people are bailing you out.
Well, when the prime minister makes a statement to the extent, I'm voting no, he, with both, both fists, and we're going to go back to our currency, and the fact that the IMF. I mean, there's no money to be had right now. You're basically that last lifeline that got thrown out, to Greece. That money got sucked up in no time, Harry. And the problem is now, I mean, if you're a tourist and you can get to the ATM and you can get money, but if you are a citizen, you are limited to that, as you noted, 60 euros a day.
Yeah.
That's not going to buy much.
And I kept seeing person after person not even being able to get 60 euros because the ATMs are not they're empty. There's no cash in them, and the banks are closed, so nobody's filling them.
And again, as I said before, the one thing that we don't know, Harry, is the fact that there is ongoing movement, behind the scenes, and from what we're being told is that even though they are due to default on their debt that's due at this point in time, and the fact that investors are just fretting about getting out of Greece exiting the Eurozone. A Greek media report, basically minutes ago, said that negotiations might restart between the government and the country's creditors. So,
well, that would be a good thing.
Yeah, and so if it remains fluid, Harry, I think we're good.
What? I mean, I'm not asking you to be Kreskin or anything, or the great, amazing Karnak, or anything like that. But should this be another bad day?
Actually, just the opposite. As we went to bed, we had a significant rally overseas, and part of that was in the Chinese market in particular. It followed over into Hang Seng, and as we're looking at the futures right now, the Dow futures look to be up about 100 plus, pre-opening. But again, that can go very, very quickly in one direction.
So
or
it's
another.
Actually improving because there's a belief that they're going to get it done.
I think so. I think, Harry, I don't know if there's a belief they're going to get it done. I think what's important here is that hopefully cooler heads will prevail, and there will be again continuing discussion. And as you alluded to, are we just going to kick the can down the road, or is this country and are the citizens of this country truly prepared to be involved in much-needed austerity programs? I mean, the problem is, with a country that doesn't have they don't manufacture. I mean, they're relying pretty much on tourism as their number one. I think they're the number one business per se within a very, very fragile economy. And you know what I found very, very interesting, Harry? I had not one but two clients just travel there, and one is virtually returning now, and this was last week. He said, "Yeah, I was in Athens, and there were some protests, but nothing. It was sort of business as usual." Sure. Now, again,
that's the problem.
Again, a lot can.
They don't think anything's ever going to change.
Well, but Harry, that was last week, and now
I know.
I'm not certain because again, the media does just a remarkable job in unfortunately hyping negative news. We really don't know how bad it is unless we were actually living through it.
Well, if you go to an ATM and there's nothing in it, and if there was something in it, and you can only get $66, that ought to tell you something's pretty bad. Breaking news, sidebar for just a moment. We've been sitting on this for weeks and weeks and weeks, and we kept our word, just like we did on the first big act that's coming. And I'm very pleased to be able to tell you that Rascal Flatts, their Riot Tour, with also special guest Ashley Monroe, will be Thursday, August 20th on the beach in Atlantic City. Tickets are available beginning this Friday, July 3rd at 10 a.m. at Ticketmaster.com. Tickets starting at $20, plus there's some fees when you do that, but $20 plus fees. Rascal Flatts, Riot Tour, Thursday, August 20th. Tickets go on sale this Friday at 10 a.m. Ticketmaster.com, Ticketmaster outlets, or by dialing 1-800-745-3000. I will tell you, I would go on the website. If you navigate and can do that, go on the website before dialing the number, because you'll be able to get, I think quicker service by doing it yourself through Ticketmaster.com. More information about the tour at RascalFlats.com. Rascal Flatts Riot Tour coming to the World's Playground Thursday, August 20th. Should be a huge day in Atlantic City. Chuck, about 3 minutes before the bottom of the hour break, Kirk Conover has a Grecian solution, not a Grecian formula for hair coloring, but a Grecian formula. And let me read it to you. It goes as follows. My plan for Greece is to swap all their euros for dollars and be done with the zone. How do you think that would turn out? I don't know.
I'm not sure what the outcome would be, Harry. I swapping euros for U.S. dollars?
Yeah. They're out of the euro. They're out of that business, and their currency becomes the dollar.
I don't think I'm not certain that Greece really has that in mind. I think they want to go back to their own currency, and that's going to be the concern when you do if and when you do that. I mean, inflation, I think, Harry, is just going to be through the roof, and their currency won't be worth much of anything. So I think that is obviously, I think going to their particular currency is not the right decision at this point in time. But you and I are not living there, and it's like anything else. If you're accustomed to living a certain lifestyle in a certain way, and all of a sudden, your station comes to you and say, "Hey, Harry, we're going to cut your pay by 50%, and we're going to increase your taxes by 20%." Mm-hmm. Chances are I don't think you'd be really happy about that.
No, not at all. But the problem is they've lived a completely unsustainable credit card type lifestyle, and the check is coming due, and they're broke, and they can't pay it, and they still want to keep it the way that it is. That's the reality. That is
the reality, and that is one of the major problems here for sure.
Brief time out. We're going to be right back. Chuck Malamut continues. It's early in the morning, our weekly visit, Tuesday in the 8 o'clock hour with Chuck Malamut, our official financial advisor for nearly 25 years now on Early in the Morning. And to reach Chuck and his team, Chuck leads the Malamut Group team at Morgan Stanley's Northfield office, and their hotline number is 609-383-2010. That's 609-383-2010. Coming up in just a few minutes, or actually after Chuck's program in about 15 minutes, we're going to be in open forum the rest of the way. I do want to squeeze in something about Governor Christie right after Chuck, but the entire 9 o'clock hour, wide open forum at 609-407-1450. With Chuck Malamut, this is Early in the Morning, and you're listening to WPG Talk Radio 1450, South Jersey's talk station. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Stay with us. 31 minutes past the hour. Chuck, where do we go from here? I mean, we've taken a lot of time with Greece. I personally just marvel at how disproportionate to reality it is, but I did know this would be the case. If they didn't take the bailout, I knew we would have a wickedly bad day on Wall Street. And you know me and my Have H phone will travel. I took a screen capture right when the markets closed yesterday, and it was bloody. Dow down 350.33, S&P 500 down 43.85, NASDAQ down 122.04. I mean, all because of Greece.
No, Harry, I as I said before, it's not it's not all Greece, but Greece has obviously a lot to do with it.
So this was going to happen anyhow?
Well, no. As I mentioned to you before, there's issues in Puerto Rico. There are issues in China. And now we're getting at the end of the quarter, all bets are off. Think about it. The quarter ends basically now. And I have heard and I've read in numerous publications, the Fed was pretty much on target for a September, maybe December movement with rates. And now with what is happening globally and the fact that treasuries have rallied significantly, the 2, the 5, and the 10-year, there is discussion that the Fed might not be so quick to move.
This is what I've been saying.
Now, our economy, the U.S. economy, happens to be pretty vibrant compared to Greece, we'll call it. And what is happening in the Eurozone outside of Greece happens to be pretty positive as well. So I think that the Fed would really like to get back on that rate increase strategy. And I don't think Harry's going to, if it happens, it's not going to be a lot, 25, 50 basis points. But just when you think about and you watch what happens in the markets just over a couple days, and the fact that, again, this could be pure speculation. I'm not going to go out and bang the table and say, Harry, this is definitely not going to happen. Chances are that it will not happen. So think about what that could potentially do, to our particular economy. The other thing, you have to really take a look at is what you own and why you own it. We've talked about certain industry groups that you really should own. We've talked about, again, international exposure. And I think, Harry, what has happened over the last couple of days could provide your listeners an opportunity if they did not take our advice in the beginning of the year, and now they have an opportunity to get in. And I think, lo and behold, if you have a 10-year time horizon, not a 10-minute time horizon, as some investors have, chances are I think you'll be very, very pleased with those particular outcomes.
The stakes couldn't be higher. And the scary thing is you've been talking on this program for a long time about how markets don't like uncertainty, and there's uncertainty right now. There's still uncertainty whether the job market is really as solid as they've maintained. There's uncertainty now. Is this Greece thing a contagion? Governor Bush is bringing up that Puerto Rico should file for the equivalent of like Chapter 9. Could Puerto Rico turn into a contagion?
Harry, I don't think Puerto Rico. I don't think Puerto Rico can turn into a contagion.
Well,
but
some
I think
tiny like Greece can.
But I think two different scenarios. Look, everyone was very much aware of what was happening in Puerto Rico. Their debt had been downgraded several notches on multiple times. It doesn't come. It doesn't. It's not shocking. It doesn't come as any surprise. The sell-off in the Chinese market, that became very, very heated very, very quickly, a lot of margin buying, and then, you have a sell-off, and ultimately what happens is the margin calls come in, they can't not be satisfied, you're sold out at the market, so that just, creates more pressure. So you have a number of converging factors here that I don't want to say took the market by surprise, but took a lot of wind out of the sails of the market. And you think about, we worked so hard over the last 6 months to get where we were year to date, and then in just a matter of a trading day,
wiped out,
pretty much taken all those gains out. So now we have to take a step back, and
from a nation that does not want to help itself. So maybe now that they've been shown the mirror, again, and they're looking at their reflection, and they see that, I don't know what kind of game they think they're playing, but when you continue to exist only because of the generosity of others that believe it's in everyone's best interest for you not to sink in quicksand, I just believe you have to come to the table and be realistic.
Well, look, the logical thing, for us, being across the world and looking at this, it's easy for us to say, vote yes, take the deal, put in the austerity programs, and right the ship. Living within the country of Greece, I'm sure a lot of that population is feeling quite differently because.
Well, look, they're no different than we are. America voted 2 straight national elections for something that's counterculture to, to what many people believe should be the direction that we should go. So we're really not that different when you think about it. People will vote what they believe are their own best interests.
Yeah, and I think, Harry, unfortunately, with the Greek prime minister basically banging the table saying voting no, and you get that you have that divide, so to speak, between those that are very well to do and those that are that struggle. What happens is the vote could go either way on the 5th of July,
and isn't that a heck of a statement? I totally agree with you, Chuck. I'm not because we're not there. I don't know what's going on the ground. Is there money being run on this campaign? Will people getting the vote out? When there's all these factors you can't take into consideration. Here's what I do believe, though. I believe, left to their own devices, that the majority of the voters in Greece will vote to keep things the way that they are.
I think,
which is crazy.
Run that by me again. I'm sorry.
I am saying they're going to vote for the plan that raises taxes only on the rich. There's 2 votes here, Chuck. You have 2 choices. Raise taxes massively on the rich and fund what exists currently, or you go with the plan where there's austerity, certain cuts will be made, certain retirement years will be raised. In other words, you either vote for what you have now or what you think you have now, or what the bailout plan is. They're not going to vote, just like this country isn't going to vote to give away that. They want the stuff. They want the free stuff. They're not going to vote to not have that.
Yeah, Harry, the next couple of days, I mean, obviously, I can't believe a payment's going to be made today.
It's not going to be made.
And now as we get to the end of the week, what is happening within the country? And you think about this for a minute. No stock, the stock market's closed for the week, so you have no liquidity.
Yeah, banks
you
are closed.
Can't
Everything's
sell.
Closed.
You can't get to your cash. So the mindset might be totally different by
Chuck,
the 5th of July.
This is a great point. I am willing to embrace that if you got to the point where, oh my gosh, they're not even refilling these ATMs. I can't even get $60 a day. I mean, I said earlier in the program in my opening monologue in the 6 o'clock hour in anticipation, Chuck, of your show today, that basically you could call a typical fast order place, order a chicken parm dinner for a family and a pizza.
I did hear this.
Okay?
Yes.
And that's all you got for the whole day. That's all you're allowed to take out. So you could be onto something if they take a look at this and say, oh my gosh, I can't get my money. I can't do anything. They tell me I can go to an ATM and get €60, but they're all empty. If panic were to strike and fear were to set in, then maybe people would vote austere. That would be the only way.
Harry, again, people do strange things under pressure.
Yeah.
And maybe this is a lot of this we in the media and government per se, our government aren't really aware of everything that's happening, and this could be a power play, and we are just watching as innocent bystanders.
Is the power play the rest of the European Union crushing Greece or making them conform? Is that the power play?
I don't know
it can't be Greece has a power play. They've got no power.
I don't want to say crushing. I do like the fact economic reform.
Yeah, so do I.
And that this can has been kicked down the road for so many years, and chances are it could get kicked down the road again. And Harry, I don't think you and I would want to be Greek citizens living in Greece, voting to exit the Eurozone. I think that is the worst of two evils here.
Chuck, quick announcement in the interest of the public. A very impeccable source. We usually go with two sources before we report, but this is we'll just say a very, very high-ranking senior casino executive that has just personally written me to say that there was a major traffic jam at the foot of the expressway, no cars in or out. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that is a crazy busy Tuesday, which I wouldn't think, coming into Atlantic City at 8:42 in the morning. It could be that maybe there's a police matter. I don't want to speculate, but we're going to find out what it's about. Is there an accident? Is there some kind of traffic, construction or something? But all I know is there's a major traffic jam, foot of the expressway, and no cars are coming in and out of Atlantic City at the moment through the expressway. So if you are, maybe you're on the expressway listening, and you can pop off at Northfield or somewhere else, NAFEC, and come in a different way. And there you go. There are a lot of emergency vehicles on the scene. So obviously something is going on.
Doesn't sound good, that's for sure, Harry.
Closing comment, Chuck.
Well, look, we're going to, as I mentioned to you earlier in the program, the markets, pre-opening are showing somewhat of a rebound after yesterday's unfortunate, huge sell-off. We're going to
Chuck, can you explain to listeners why are they rebounding when there's just as much uncertainty today as there was yesterday? I don't understand why there's a rebound.
Well, I think, Harry, a couple of things happened. One, you had a decent rally in the Shanghai market, which was, the Chinese market has sold off significantly. The fact that they might have some discussions, at the negotiation table.
See, that's what that means to me. You have reason for hope.
So, and the fact that typically after you have a day like you have yesterday, there's always sort of a bounce back. Now the question is,
so do you think this has the potential to be just a one-day event?
Harry, I'm not going to make a prediction with the markets. You've known me long enough. I think what is fair to say to your listeners, if you haven't done it already, you need to take a serious look at what you own. And this is, and the fact that we are basically gave up all of our gains, you're probably in a position to make a buy at this point in time.
As always, Chuck, thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Harry.
Yep, wonderful to be with you. That's Chuck Malamut. He leads his group, the Malamut Group at Morgan Stanley's Northfield office. 609-383-2010 is Chuck and his team's phone number, 383-2010, 609-383-2010. The program that you've just listened to is presented by Chuck Malamut, a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley. The information, views, and opinions expressed on this broadcast are those of Chuck and do not necessarily reflect those of Morgan Stanley or its affiliates. They are current as of the date of this broadcast and are subject to change without notice. Neither the information provided nor any opinion expressed herein constitutes a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. This presentation is for informational purposes only. Morgan Stanley, Smith Barney, member SIPC. We're going to take a brief time out. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. It is 45 minutes past the hour, and you're listening to Hurley in the Morning on WPG. Talk Radio, 1450. We'll be right back. You want to jump in? Now's a good time. I do want to mention Governor Christie for just a moment, but we're going to have open forum the rest of the way at 609-407-1450, 609-407-1450. Phone lines are open right now.